This class is going to be super basic. So we're going to start with, what the core principles of financial wellness are. Understanding income and expenses, needs versus wants, the importance of tracking spending, creating simple, realistic budgets, and introducing financial goals, short, mid, and long term, and what those mean. I just wanted to put in here too, if you have any questions as we go, please just feel free to enter them into the chat there. I have Maureen on the line here, back end, and she'll be helping moderate those too. Why does money matter to you, right? So money skills equals freedom, choices, and less stress. So I don't know about you guys, but whenever I have money, I am less stressed, right? That's pretty simple. I can afford my rent, my food, any luxuries that I want, my car, payment, anything along those lines. So starting out here, how do you know what you are earning, right? So calculating your annual income. Most people probably have a rough idea of what you are earning annually. You do when you do your taxes each year, or you're just seeing your paycheck, right? But this is just a breakdown of how to calculate your income. So weekly pay, you take your net income times 52 weeks in a year. And then that equals your annual income. Divide that by 12, that equals monthly income. Paid bi-weekly, right? So if you have a net income of 26, excuse me, if you're paid bi-weekly, take your net income times 26, that equals your annual income. Divide that by 12, that equals your monthly income. So I have an example here of what if you were paid $2,000 bi-weekly times 26, that equals about $52,000 per year. $52,000 per year divided by 12 equals about $4,300 a month. And then if you are paid monthly, obviously that's pretty simple. If you take your net income times 12, that equals your annual income, right? These are some examples of irregular income. I want you to put in the chat if you have any other examples of irregular income that I'm not thinking of, right? So part-time jobs, do maybe do something on the side, like maybe you do book work or anything like that. Selling produce. Around here, we have the farmers market weekly in the spring, summer, fall months. They have income from that, right? People who have a green thumb, not me, but I'm grateful for the other people who do, right? Tips, if you are a waitress, you get tips. Those might not be regular income, right? Because you never know what kind of night you're going to have. You might have good tips or bad tips. Craft fairs, if you're a crafty person, you might go to craft fairs and sell things. Seasonal work, some things like lawn care, snow removal, maybe even painting houses, things like that. And I just want you to think of all the ways you can make money, even if it's not every month. Maybe one month you work for an auction company. Maybe one month you help out your grandparent or something like that, or neighbor or anything. So, excuse me. So, how do you calculate irregular income? So, if you have income 3 months in a row, but it's irregular, right? You take that 3 months worth of expenses and find the average. So, month one, you might make $750. Month two, you have a good month, it's $1,200. Month three, you make only $500. Maybe your snow removal is going down or something like that. So you take all three of those, 750, 1,200, 500, and add it up to equal 2,450. You divide that by three to get the average, and you're making about an average of $816 per month. Here's the tricky part, right? Figuring out what you owe, right? Look at your accounts to see what you've spent. If you have a bank account, it's good to sit down at the end of the month or when your statement comes out and see what exactly you spent on expenses and different things like that. Collect receipts. Maybe you use cash, for different things. That would be a good way to, a good reason to collect receipts. Maybe you use cash to go to the grocery store one time, and then the next time you use your card. It's still all expenses and coming out of your income. It's just maybe not, coming from the same place. Here are some different examples of spreadsheets or apps to use. Excel, Microsoft Word, etc. Different things like that are pretty easy to use, pretty straightforward. And I did put some examples of different apps in there too. These are free apps. If you pay for the paid version, then you're going to get more, of the services that they offer. Empower, Rocket Money, NerdWallet, and Pocket Guard. I personally use Rocket Money. I really like it. It's really easy to use, and it kind of tells you when you're getting close to your spending limit too. Say, you only want to spend $200 at the for gas each month. The when you're then purchasing gas, it will tell you, you have $40 left or whatever it is. This just talks about categorizing your expenses, right? So you have fixed expenses. These are the same each month. Your rent or your mortgage, loan payments, cell phone bills, things that don't vary from month to month. I put cell phone bills in there. They can vary. Sometimes, if you go up or use too much data or different things like that. But typically, you know what is going to be owed. The variable, excuse me, variable expenses. These are costs that you are going to have each month, right? But they might change. Like groceries, gas. Gas goes up and down. Entertainment, clothing. One month you might need new work clothes, and the next month you wouldn't. So different things like that. Annual or semi-annual expenses. So these are things that are paid once or twice a year. Your insurance, some subscriptions, taxes, and different things like that that are paid once or twice a year. So we are going to play a game here. Make sure you're paying attention. Marine's going to launch this game. And it's just asking you what your fixed expenses are, what's a fixed expense, what's a variable expense, annual or semi-annual. All right, I see it is launched. So once I see some answers come in, I'll give you a little bit of time here. And feel free if you have questions, you can either come off mute or put them in the chat. I see a couple people are answering here, so give everyone a few more minutes here to answer. So we have six of seven that have answered. So I'm gonna go ahead and share the results here. Um, yeah, property taxes. They, like I said, they're annual or semi-annual. You know, you can decide with the courthouse. I think you can. There is the ability to pay them semi-annually if you would like, or annually. Rent, fixed. That's a fixed expense, right? You know, you have to pay it every month. It doesn't vary unless you get a rent increase. A water bill, that one is split, right? So that's actually a variable expense. Um, you know you're gonna have it every month, right? So I can see why you thought fixed, right? But it does change from month to month depending on how much water you have used. Hair care, variable, right? Maybe you're someone who only gets a haircut once a year or every other month or 6 weeks or whatever. So it does change. Insurance premium, I see that is split kind of there, the fixed and the semi-annual. So the actual you know, correct would be maybe both, right? Because maybe it depends on what type of insurance you are talking about. So that could be both. If you're talking about maybe home insurance, that could be once a year, on annual or semi-annual. But maybe car insurance, renter's insurance, different things like that would be a fixed. Transportation, variable. Good job. Groceries, variable, right? Unfortunately, the cost of groceries keeps going up and up. And sometimes down. Not very often though. A loan payment, fixed. Yep. You know when you sign that agreement what it's going to be per month generally. Clothing, variable, right? Good job. So moving on here, this is talking about the importance of tracking spending, right? I know from personal experience that coffee is very expensive, right? I myself bought a $10 coffee yesterday, and was mildly appalled that I did that, but I still did it. Um, but daily coffee, you know, $7 per day equals $49 weekly, $212 monthly, and $2,548 yearly. So it is important to track spending. I've heard a lot of examples in the past of people who, you know, they just run to the dollar store once in a while, right? I'm very guilty of that as well. I'll just be like, oh, I just need milk or you know, just something quick. So I'll run there and then they always get me where I'm running through and I'm like, oh yeah, I need that too, and that too, and that too. And then I spent $40 just running to the store for milk. So it is important to track spending like that. The little things add up. Also, you know, Amazon, being so rural in South Dakota, Amazon is a blessing and a curse, right? I go on there and I put in anything that I need, right? I need diapers for my daughter. I go on Amazon and I order them. I don't think twice about it. Things like that, they're a necessity, but they do add up, you know. Social media, targeted ads. This is just a little tidbit I thought was interesting and that I would throw in there. I don't know if any of you get targeted ads, but I sure do. I know most people that I talk to also get targeted ads, right? So these are things that maybe you've looked up in the past. Maybe when you're scrolling on social media, you've hovered over something, you know. One of my coworkers is expecting, right? On my Facebook started popping up baby clothing, you know, cribs, things like that. And I'm like, and I didn't even say anything about it. She was just talking to me. So, just things like that. It is almost creepy, I swear. Also, I always like to tell the story of when I knew when my husband was going to propose to me because I kept seeing ring ads on my Facebook, right? Because he had clearly used the same internet as me to look up different rings, right? They're designed to make you spend, right? Because you've been talking about it, you've been looking it up, you've been seeing it, you've been thinking about it, and then you're like, oh, that's really easy, right? I just click here, here, and here, and I have it on the way, right? Well, that can often lead to overspending too. The everyone has it mentality doesn't mean you need it, right? Just because these certain shoes are out of season doesn't mean you need new shoes, right? It doesn't mean you need to have the same purse as your coworkers or anything like that. And this is just saying, comparison can lead to overspending. I would love if you guys have examples of different targeted ads. I would love to hear about them in the chat too, if you have time. This needs versus wants, right? Needs, they're essential for your survival, safety, and fulfilling non-negotiable commitments, right? If you commit to a rental agreement, that's non-negotiable, right? You need to pay the set amount that you and the landlord have agreed to per month, or however you have agreed to it. Survival. You need food. You need a car in most areas in South Dakota. And you need a home for safety as well. Shelter, things like that. Non-negotiable commitments, right? Like loans, different things along those lines. Your wants, right? These are things that are designed to enhance your lifestyle, but are not strictly necessary for the basic living or meeting obligations, right? So things like makeup, would be a good example. Hair care products, designer clothes, a luxury vehicle, different things like that are example of wants, right? So just because I think that you all need to be engaged, we are going to play another game. I'm going to have Marine launch this one too. And this is pretty similar to the last game, right? It's straightforward. Choose if it's a need versus wants. And I promise there are only a couple of trick questions in there. I'm just kidding. But we will then go over it after everyone has completed that as well. Perfect. So this one's a little longer too, but they're pretty easy, right? 24 questions, but you should be able to get them all. We kind of talked about them. And if it's not working or if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat too. We have 6 out of 7 at 85% completed. So I think we can go ahead and start kind of going through this here. Maybe give them a few more seconds to complete it. Okay, sharing the results here, right? A phone charger. Yep, you need that, right? You need to have a phone. I don't know about most people, but we actually do not even have a home phone, so we would need to have, a cell phone in case of emergency and different things like that. Spotify Premium, that is a want. Gas money, need, right? Louis Vuitton shoes, want. Rental application fee. You need that. If you need a rental home, you need to be able to pay the fee to apply. Wireless earbuds. What if you need them to do your job? It could be a need, right? But most of the time it would be a want, correct? A MacBook Air. That is a want. You could need a computer, but you don't necessarily need a MacBook computer, right? You could probably find something a little bit more affordable. Office supplies, that's split, right? A want versus a need. I suppose it would depend exactly what you were wanting or needing. Um, if it's something like, basic paper, things like that, you probably need that. But if it's something more like office decor, maybe that's a want, right? It also depends on what your office provides for you, right? I've worked in both settings, Grow's really good, and I could say I want anything, a new stapler, and they would get it for me. But when I worked at a different place, it was like pulling teeth. So a vehicle, that's split as well. A want versus a need. So it depends that as well, where you're located at, right? So in Sisseton, there is, which is where we are located, there is a public transport. But I have lived, in different towns that there is not public transport. So then in that case, you would probably need a vehicle, right? And if you live out of town, it would be a need too. Makeup, a want. Yeah, you don't have to have makeup. No. A bed. That really surprises me that it's split there, the want versus need. I personally think you probably need a bed. I guess you could sleep on the floor if you absolutely had to. But for more of a shelter purposes, I would say that would be a need. Tiffany tennis bracelet. Um, just a side note here, I looked up how much those cost, and it could be you could buy a pretty nice vehicle for that cost. $30,000 was the one I saw. Anyways, that would be a want, right? The internet. So actually, my research into the internet is saying that this is a need, right? There aren't a lot of things that you can do nowadays without the internet. You have applications, schoolwork, work for your job, different things like that. It is considered a need now by most people. If you just needed it to watch TV or anything like that, it might not be considered that. But, even those that are elderly that don't maybe use it 24/7, they might use it to connect with people too. Medication need, obviously. A movie ticket, and it's a want. Decor want, right? You don't have to have decor. It does make it nicer. make it feel more at home, right? Texas Roadhouse, a want. Coffee, want. Some people would disagree and say that's a need. Groceries, need. Yeah, you need to eat, right? You need groceries. Clothing, a need versus a want. I would say that clothing is a need, right? You can't go into public in most places without clothing on. But you might not need brand new clothing, right? There are other options, like a thrift store, a secondhand store, etc. Luke Combs concert tickets, want. Apple iPhone, want. Cell phone, need. Yeah. You don't have to have a Apple iPhone. You could just have a basic cell phone. Health insurance need. Yep. Good job, everyone. So moving on here, we're going to talk about some goals for the future. You have short-term goals, mid-term goals, long-term goals. I want you to take a moment today to think about what are your goals? Or do you have a short-term goal that's 1 to 5 years? Do you have a mid-term goal that's 5 years? Or do you have a long-term goal that's more than 5 years? These are some goal examples, right? Maybe the 1 to 5 years would be developing an emergency fund, right? That would be, 3 months worth of your salary or your expenses, um, to feel comfortable if something were to happen, right? If you were to lose your job, get injured, um, anything like that, right? You might have a 5 year goal of traveling. You might want to go to, um, you know, Paris or to a beach vacation. That might be a 5 year goal. Moving, it takes people quite a while to save for their down payment, right? Um, You know, they do have programs out there that will help with this, but maybe you want to upgrade your home or move into something a little bit in a different location or something like that. That would be a longer term goal, right? And then I have in the corner there, school. Um, uh, maybe you want to go back to school, and that's something that you need to save a little money for so you can take some time off or pay your tuition, right? I was recently at a school and I had to laugh that most of the students' 5 year goals excuse me, were to go on vacation. And then when they were learning what the cost of vacation was, they were all a little like, oh, maybe not, kind of thing. If you have to save $600 a month to go on vacation, that's not doable always. So maybe you need to push back the vacation or take a more realistic vacation. So, in our time between now and next week, I want you to do a couple things. Think about one thing you want in the next year. It doesn't have to be big. Maybe you want to pay off a small credit card. Maybe you want to buy, the person behind you's coffee or order or something like that. Think about what it would cost, right, to do that. Maybe you want to go on vacation, like I was just talking about how expensive it is. Maybe you want to buy a nice piece of clothing or purse or different things like that. And then think about how much it would cost and how much you would need to save monthly. And just write that down as a goal for the next year. Just getting a little bit into credit here. In next week's conversation, we are going to go in more in depth on this, but just to kind of preview, credit does equal borrowing money, right? In college, I worked for a credit card company, and you would not believe the amount of people who didn't understand what they were getting into when they borrowed from the credit card company. Read the terms and conditions. Credit cards are not free money, right? They have interest, they may have fees, they may have annual fees. Um, but that's not to say that they are the worst thing in the world either, right? When used wisely, they can help with getting apartments, getting a better rate on your insurance, getting cars, and sometimes even jobs check your credit report too. So having good credit can help with a lot of things as well. Just to kind of end here on you got this. You don't have to be perfect. Every small choice adds up, and learning puts you ahead, right? So you need to take the time to kind of evaluate what your budget looks like, what you can afford, what you're currently spending, and what you need as a cushion, right, to help you feel comfortable. Does anybody have any questions or anything? And yes, I do have some homework for you. I'm going to send out an email um, with a sample budget attached to it. We are not gonna require it back, but just for your personal use, and to kind of make you start thinking about healthy habits that you can create with your budget. What is it you need to do? Do you need to when you're going to the dollar store, take out cash instead of just using your credit card or debit card, different things like that. And think about, what can you cut? What can you not live without, right? Do you have to have that $7 coffee every day? And that's fine if that's what you want. Um, but then maybe to get ahead, you need to cut having, dinner out every week or something along those lines. We are ending a little bit early today too, just because I do have homework for you. I don't think anybody's going to be opposed to me ending a meeting a little bit early. But we also have this survey here along with our questions. It's just a short survey. It helps us continue to provide these trainings for free. I'm also going to send out a email with the survey link in it as well. So don't worry if you don't get that right away. And I did put it in the chat too. So thank you for everyone who could join us. I hope this answered all of your burning questions. I know it was pretty basic, but if you come back next week, we are going to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of things, especially regarding credit, and different ways to acquire credit, and use your credit wisely. Okay. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I will stop sharing this. And I will let you guys go on with the rest of your day here.